Let's talk about prayer. Prayer is the simplest act of faith. In fact, for many folks, it is really the very first one they make. Think about the desperate prayer prayed by the man who was never really into church stuff, but now sits helpless beside his wife's hospital bed. Or consider the child who is just learning the words, "Now I lay me down to sleep." The act of prayer is nothing more and nothing less than when a mortal man talks to the Almighty God. And that description makes it sound both incredibly easy and incredibly intimidating, doesn't it? It sounds easy because we all talk to people every day, in person, over the phone, on Zoom, via text message, email, in countless ways. So clearly, talking is a skill we have. On the other hand, it sounds intimidating because it's a mortal like you talking to the Almighty, transcendent, holy, perfect God of the universe. And that takes quite a bit of gall, right? Who are we to tell God anything? So maybe it's not as easy as just talking. Maybe it's something best left to the professionals. The folks who really know what they're doing. The ones that have an in with God. Well, I'm not sure where these wrong ideas of prayer come from. Maybe it's because many of us grew up going to churches where the prayers sound very fancy. Maybe it's the sense of our own unworthiness. But when Jesus teaches about prayer, he says almost the exact opposite. He teaches that your worthiness has nothing to do with whether God will hear your prayer or how he will answer. And in fact, if you feel worthy, that can be a barrier to genuine prayer. Take, for example, the story of the Pharisee and the tax collector. Now, the Pharisee, he prayed a big, braggadocious prayer. He felt very comfortable praying to Almighty God. After all, he wasn't, like all the other sinners, like that tax collector over there. He fasts and tithes, and, he doesn't hardly sin at all. But the truth is, he was no more worthy before God than the tax collector who beat his breast and simply prayed, "God, have mercy on me, a sinner." Both were sinners before God, and neither deserved the honor of speaking with him. And yet, according to Jesus, it was the tax collector, the one who felt unworthy, the one who prayed the simple, humble prayer, who was heard and justified by God. Our intuition is that the Pharisee prayer is the one that will be heard, the one that has power and influence with God, when in fact it is the humble, simple prayer of the sinner that God desires most. When his disciples ask Jesus to teach them how to pray, he gives them the prayer that we call the Lord's Prayer, or the Our Father. But before he does, he says, "When you pray, don't heap up empty phrases as the Gentiles do, for they think they will be heard for their many words. Don't be like them, for your Father knows what you need before you ask him." And then he goes on to say, "Pray like this." And he speaks those words that are so familiar to us. "Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name." Except it sounds fancier when we say it than when he said it. It has to do with our culture more than anything. We use these and thys and arts when we want things to sound old and important. We just don't use those words in normal conversation. But people used to. Thee and thy used to be just common language, just like how we use you and your in our language today. Because the Lord's Prayer has been taught word for word from generation to generation, the version that most of us received still sounds like that old language. There's no theological or interpretive reason to do it. It just kind of sounds weird to us if we don't. But Jesus didn't use old language. So to the ears of the disciples, the Lord's Prayer would have sounded more like this. Our Father, who is in heaven, let your name be holy. May your kingdom come and your will be done on earth the way it's done in heaven. Give us today our food for today. And forgive us our wrongs as we forgive those who wrong us. Lead us where we won't be tempted and save us from evil. Now, we'll go over each of those phrases in the coming weeks, but I would like to encourage you starting today to begin a regular practice of prayer with God. And as you do, don't try to make it long or fancy. Just speak simple words from the heart, giving thanks for what you're thankful for, and asking humbly for God's help where it's needed. And God will hear your humble prayer, and He will be glad that you talked.